No surprise here. I dig an earthy Pinot, man. Here's the deal though. The physical act of sending wine to my door is heavily reliant on rosy daily forecasts. That's because Merlots, Pinots, Cabs, basically all wines are highly susceptible to in-transit temperature swings. Temperature perfecting Livery Vino takes iffy and extreme weather out of the equation. Vino containers available in 4 and 6 bottle options provide 5+ days of tested, trusted thermal performance, giving wineries and wine distributors the ability to box and send their bottles through the hottest and coldest months of the year. And unlike the cardboard, there's no single-use packaging like styrofoam and gooey ice packs for me to wrestle and carry out to the curb. These reusable boxes come equipped with return shipping labels. So when you're done unloading all that sweet, delicious nectar, you simply pick it up, drop it on the curb. Year-round wine without the waste, what's not to love?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to welcome you as one of our nearly 1,000 attendees from around the world to the 2021 Oregon Wine Symposium. These are exceptional times that have required exceptional action. This week, that exceptional action takes the form of our first virtual wine symposium. Now, clearly, there are some limitations to the format, but instead, let's focus on the many positives. As in years past, our speakers represent not only some of the best viticulturists and winemakers in Oregon, Washington, and California, but through the magic of Zoom, we are fortunate to include luminaries in these fields from Argentina, Australia, Canada, Chile, England, France, Italy, New Zealand, Spain, and South Africa. This is easily our most star-studded, global, and accessible wine symposium ever. Enormous thanks must go to our scores of education committee members, led by wine board directors and co-chairs Eugenia Keegan and Bertoni Foston, and orchestrated by Bree Stock, our education director at the Oregon Wine Board. I'd also like to take a moment and give special thanks to Kevin Chambers, who served on the education committee for many years, as he retires from the Oregon Wine Board after one of his multiple stints of service to the industry. Few have contributed as much as Kevin over the last 40 years. Also leaving the board this year is Barbara Steele, who contributed much on her too short tenure. Replacing Kevin and Barbara are two new directors, Remy Drapkin, owner of Remy Wines in the Willamette Valley, and Dennis O'Donoghue, founder of Celtic Moon Vineyards in the Rogue. Welcome. This year, each day of the symposium will highlight very important Oregon Wine Board funded research presentations, which will also be available on demand throughout. You won't want to miss a number of critical and very timely sessions on grape smoke exposure impacts and approaches to mitigating smoke impact that were funded with a $37,000 emergency allocation from the OWB Treasury last September for lab analyses of 11 grape varieties and wines from all over the state. On the business front, we have a number of sessions on digital and e-commerce sales strategies that have never been more critical to any winery's success. We will also be presenting a very timely panel on national sales in a post-COVID world. On Wednesday, Dr. Greg Jones will once again deliver his wildly popular climatology report. On Thursday, we'll preview the highly anticipated Oregon Economic Impact Study, which is fielded every 3 years. Key highlights will include the sum of all economic activity in Oregon related directly or indirectly to wine, estimated wine-related and induced jobs and wages in Oregon, our crop value, and the impact of wine-related tourism. The numbers are impressive and will be shared far and wide in the weeks and months to come. On Friday, we will have the grand unveiling of our new brand and identity for Oregon wine. Each afternoon we'll gather for a social hour and present well-deserved industry awards. This year's awards include special recognition for some professionals who responded to the circumstances presented during 2020 in exceptional ways that helped our industry immeasurably. So let's start today's sessions. We're enormously proud of a new program that delivers on the work the Oregon Wine Board established in 2020 as we launched our commitment to change. Our spotlight today will be on diversity, equity, and inclusion, opening with a panel on creating an inclusive workplace culture in the real world. In addition, the Oregon Wine Board implemented a scholarship program for aspiring wine professionals of color in Oregon, and 24 scholarships were awarded to this week's full symposium for these incoming professionals. And now I have the honor of introducing today's keynote speaker, Steve Brown, who will share with us his thoughts on the future of wine, new customers, new channels, digital winemaking, transparency, and the desnobification. Steve Brown is a futurist, author, entrepreneur, and executive consultant with over 30 years of experience in high tech. Prior to building his own consulting practice, he was Intel's chief evangelist and worked in Intel Labs as a futurist. Steve helps companies to be more prepared for the future, to be more resilient, more innovative, and more profitable. He helps leaders to improve their technology, acumen, create thoughtful digital strategies, and to understand the profound impact technology will have on their businesses 5, 10, and 15 years from now. He is the author of The Innovative Ultimatum, How 6 Strategic Technologies Will Reshape Every Business in the 2020s, a how-to guide on innovation and digital transformation. Steve is also the co-founder of the Providence Chain Network, a business designed to bring transparency to global commerce. He holds a Bachelor of Science and Master of Engineering degrees in Microelectronic Systems Engineering from Manchester University. He was born in the UK and he lives with his wife in Portland. Let's welcome Steve now.
Hello and welcome. I'm futurist Steve Brown, and this is a conversation about the future of wine. Today I want to talk about how you can use technology to reach new customers through new channels. Perhaps think about digital winemaking, which is going to sound like a weird thing to many of you, and how you might embrace transparency to be able to make your wine more accessible to customers and to desnobify wine. Before we leap in, I should probably tell you a little bit about myself, because sometimes people hear the word futurist and think, well, what's that? It's a thing. It's a thing that I've been doing for a number of years now. I was one of Intel's futurists, and now I'm a professional speaker and consultant that helps companies big and small, organizations big and small, to think through what the future of X might be. In this case, the future of wine. So I speak for a living. This is what I look like when I'm dressed up in the pre-COVID era anyway. A bit more chill here as I record this in my office for you today. I'm also an entrepreneur. So I'm co-founder of a project called the Providence Chain Network. We'll talk a bit more about what that is later. To illustrate some ideas I want to share with you. And I'm an author. So I wrote a book called The Innovation Ultimatum. It's designed to be a handbook for people who don't know much about technology, but want to figure out how to use it to innovate in every aspect of their business. So if you ever wanted to know something about artificial intelligence or blockchain technology or augmented reality, or any of the cool, sexy things that you might hear about in the press, that book might be interesting to you. In addition to being a technologist, I spent 30 years at Intel Corporation, where I was a futurist working in Intel Labs. I also am a consumer of wine. I love nothing more than to get out to wine country. My wife and I and our friends are out in wine country once or twice a month during the summer months. We get out to Walla Walla fairly regularly and occasionally down to Napa as well. So big lover of wine, big collector of wine. I like the good stuff. And I like wineries so much, I even went and got married in one. When I met my wife, Kristen, we were courting, and I said, so what are your goals in life? What do you want out of life? Quick as a flash, she said to me, Steve, what I want is a wine cellar with 1,000 bottles in it. I thought, okay, we can do that. And we got married. So love my wine, and I'm really glad to be able to be here talking to you about the future of wine through the lens of a technology futurist. So I hope my remarks will be useful for you today and stimulate some fresh thinking about where the wine industry might go in the future as a result of where all industries are going in the future. So let's leap in. Before we get into talking about wine, we're going to take a couple of brief detours. One, to talk about COVID and what's that's done to the world, and what the implications are for businesses. And then we'll take a little detour and talk about technology, and then we'll get into the world of wine. So let's talk COVID first. You can think about COVID as this three-headed beast, a public health crisis wrapped inside a workplace crisis, which has led to an economic crisis. So, those three are all very interrelated. But what it's meant is that businesses have really struggled to operate, and that has had huge economic implications for their businesses. So it's been a tough time. It's been a very tough time for everybody in your industry. My heart goes out to you. And then, we threw some ridiculous wildfires on top of that just to make your lives even more miserable. Now, what has this done for consumers? Well, I think you can think about it in three ways. First of all, this is the great reflection. Time, the way I think of it is we were all sent to our rooms, our bedrooms, to think about what we'd done, right? We had a time of reflection about what was important to us, what our values are, what our priorities are. The modern world that seemed unbreakable, sure is breakable. So we were exposed to the fragility of the world, and that has changed consumer attitudes. It's changed the way they think about their consumption, and it's changed their priorities and the way that they plan to consume in the future. So they're all thinking more local, more environmentally responsible, more ethical, more sustainable. Those things have taken a big bump during this time. Another way to think about it is this is the great defrosting. Organizations, industries that were frozen in place, either because of tradition, complacency, were just shaken out of that because of the necessity of innovating to survive COVID. And you saw that in the educational sector, in a very traditional sector, embracing the ability to do distance learning. You saw it in healthcare with telehealth, telemedicine being practiced on a far grander scale in 2020 than it had ever been before. So it is the defrosting of industries and the acceleration of change. We should not think about this time as a blip that we have to get through, and then we can go back to the way we did business in January of 2020. That is a fallacy. COVID was an accelerator, and it accelerated trends that were going to happen anyway, and the shift towards more digital channels, more digital operations, the shift in consumer attitudes were shifts that were underway, but we basically saw 5 years of change happen in 5 months in COVID. So we're not going back to the way that we were. You cannot be complacent and just think we're just going to get through this and then we'll be fine on the other side. We'll go back to the way things were. It'll all be peachy. It won't. Things have changed forever, and COVID was the great accelerator, particularly of an accelerator towards new channels, new ways of buying, and digital channels in particular. So that's COVID. Let's talk about tech. I want to give you some examples to hopefully bring to life for you just how powerful these new technologies that are coming are and what kind of business problems they can solve. So I'll give you some examples from other industries, and then we'll get into what it all means for wine. The big picture here is that digital technology is becoming ever more intimately connected with the physical world that we live in. So the digital world and the physical world are having this bridge built between them. And there are 6 technologies in particular that are maturing in this decade that will be combined in creative ways to solve business problems that could not be solved before using digital technology. And they are these ones I'm showing you here on this slide. So the Internet of Things, which is sensors, so that the physical world, the digital world understands what's happening in the physical world. Autonomous machines, which allow the digital world to act in the physical world. Augmented reality that blends people's perception of the world, blends digital objects and information into their field of view. Artificial intelligence, which is great at finding patterns in data. I'll talk more about artificial intelligence in a moment. We'll zoom in on that. Blockchain technology, which allows you to store information in a way that's immutable, meaning you can't edit it after the fact. That's been used for new payment systems, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which I find to be a bit of a yawn, and also underpinning new supply chain transparency platforms. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then this is all tied together with new network technologies. If you live in a city, you'll get gleaming new fast 5G technology. If you live in a rural environment, and many of you who work in the wine industry do live in a more rural setting, you are now going to have access to broadband even when you're in your fields because of new satellite technology. We're going to put more satellites into space in the next 5 years than in all of human history, and that's going to blanket the planet in high-speed connectivity, meaning we'll be able to connect everyone and everything everywhere by the end of this decade. So you look at all of that, that's a huge amount of transformative technology that's coming, and it will be used to do some pretty amazing things. Let me give you just a few examples to explain what I'm talking about. And I want to give you some examples in the realm of artificial intelligence. You can use it to help robots see, so machine vision. I'll give you some examples of that. We all are able to talk to our devices now, so natural user interfaces. Design optimization, helping to optimize designs that humans create. I'll give you examples from the engineering world and also later from the wine world on that. To make predictions about the future, by looking for patterns, historical patterns that humans aren't aware of, but AIs can spot. To mass personalize products and services. And then there's the notion of super sensing, being able to sense things that humans cannot sense in the simplest way. So let me give you an example of what I mean by super sensing and a few other examples to really drive the point home that things are changing fast. So if any of you have had a COVID test, it's not fun, I'm told. I have not had one, but you get one of these swabs jammed up your nose. It gets put into a tube, sent off to a lab, it's analyzed. You get the results, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10 days later, when it's maybe not useful. That chemical biological test is a very physical test. It lives in the physical world. What would that look like if it was digital? Well, there's a company in Israel called Vocalis Health that has figured out how to use a microphone to hear diseases in your voice. So it can hear what it calls vocal biomarkers that betray a disease state that you have. So they've already shown that they can hear chronic heart failure, coronary artery disease, COPD, and sleep apnea in the sound of your voice. They now have a diagnostic they developed to hear COVID-19 in the sound of your voice, even before you're symptomatic. In the longer term, they think they'll be able to hear hypertension, diabetes, and perhaps even cancer in the sound of your voice. This is AI combined with a microphone, being able to see patterns in your vocal, the patterns of your voice, to be able to extract from that and diagnose healthcare conditions. Now they're imagining this will be an app, and they're going to be selling this later this year, for people who want to bring their staff back into the office. They will be able to speak into their phone. Their voice print will go up into the cloud, be analyzed by an AI, and they'll get yep, you're clear to come back into the office. This has been shown to be as or more accurate than a chemical test. So I wanted to bring that example to show you this is big changes that digital technology are bringing to the world. Let me give you another one. This again is AI being used by a company called Autodesk, who has big offices here in Portland, where I'm recording this today. They use a technique called generative design. What that does is it takes a design from a designer, whether that is an architectural design, a mechanical design, any kind of design, and it riffs on it. And it comes up with hundreds or thousands of options, different variants of that design, puts them through simulation, and comes back to the designer and says, if you tweaked it this way, it would be 7% cheaper to make. If you design it this way, its tensile strength would increase by 22%. If you design the office layout this way, you're getting 3 more desks and you'd have better flow, whatever the definition that you might be going for as a designer. What comes out of this is you get results like you see shown on the slide here, which are very sort of organic looking, they're optimized, and they deliver capabilities that are far beyond what either the human designer could do, or importantly, that the AI could do on its own either. It is the collaboration of humans and machines working together that makes the powerful difference here. And I'm going to give you an example at the very end of this talk about what this means for the winemaking process. Another fun example, this time from Starbucks in China. They use the Wi-Fi hotspot simply to count how many phone signals it can see in the store. Usually one phone equals one person means they can count how many people are in the store. They then use that to control the music system. If the store is quiet, they put on chill out tunes, they put the volume down a little bit, and they encourage you to sit around, order another cup of coffee, maybe buy a piece of cake while you're at it. If the store is busy, they increase the volume, increase the tempo of the music, and get people in and out. Money, money, money. This has had a material impact on their business by creating this responsive store that responds to consumers and creates the right environment that optimizes for sales. What kind of responsive environments could you create in your industry to optimize sales? One more example. Actually, I'm going to need one more after this one. This is a robot. Robots don't look like they do in sci-fi anymore. This is a robot valet. It parks cars. And robots can often do things in a way that don't replace humans. They do them differently than humans would do. Because a robot is strong enough to pick up a car and drag it where it needs to go, it doesn't need to open the doors. So it's way more secure. You don't have to leave your keys with the valet service. And it can park cars much closer together, which in Gatwick Airport in London, which is where these are on trial, you can put the cars much more close together and make much better use of space, which is a premium in a big city like London. Final example I'd give you is of augmented reality. This is computing for people who need to work with their hands. 80% of people work with their hands or in highly mobile environments like retail. So computing we've had in the past has not really been suitable for those people. So for surgeons like this who need to visualize digital information like x-rays or CT scans and overlay them on the patient, this is a phenomenal solution that helps them improve the quality of care to get in and out of their surgeries more rapidly and have better outcomes. So you're going to see augmented reality showing up as a new platform that people will be able to use in fast-moving environments with using their hands. I'm thinking like working in fields, working in wineries, and that technology is going to mature through this decade. Watch this space. Not quite ready yet, but we're getting there. So that's an example of the types of things that are coming. I wanted to use that to set the scene. So when I tell you all this other stuff, you don't go, wow, that's never going to happen. Actually, yes, this stuff is happening, and it's happening so quickly. It's even surprising me as a futurist, and I live in this stuff. So I promised we'd talk about wine. This is a talk about the future of wine. Let's get into it. I want to talk about how technology will reshape the sales and the marketing of wine, how we need to think about that differently, what are some consumer trends in this space, and what should you be really thinking about as you reimagine your sales and marketing plans going forward. Then we'll talk a little bit about viticulture and winemaking itself, and then I'll wrap it up with a few closing thoughts on what all of this means to your industry. So I pay very close attention to consumer trends. What are consumers thinking? How are their buying habits changing? What do they care about? What are their priorities? How are they shifting? This is a summary of what I'm seeing in the market. So let's run through them one by one. First of all, we're moving from a consumer culture where it's all about consume and consumption, yay, gratify, to a much more conscious consumer. Now, this is only a percentage of the population. It's not even a majority of the population yet, but it is steadily growing. People who are thinking about the impact of the products that they buy, the impact on the environment, the impact on other people. If you see the news stories about Girl Scout cookies recently, where Girl Scouts are refusing to sell cookies because they include palm oil, which may or may not have been harvested by little girls just like them in horrific environments in Indonesia and Malaysia. That is an example of the rise of the conscious consumer. That is going to continue to happen, and being able to tell a story about how your product meets the needs so that people can feel good about buying your product is going to be vital going forward. You're seeing, as part of that, a demand from consumers for more transparency, for more information about the products they buy. Now, you can't fit much more on those wine labels, and they're also regulated. So how do you do that? There are going to be schemes that help people to get more information through their phones, which allows them to explore whatever set of information they want, explore video, those sorts of things, so you can start to provide the information that consumers demand. We're also seeing a move towards equity, inclusivity, and increased access. How do you make products, services more accessible to more people? You're not ruling people out. And historically, the wine industry has been known as a more exclusive product, and that was great for you back in the day. I'm not sure that it helps you anymore. You're also seeing a desire from consumers for more customized and personalized products and experiences. And I've seen, a number of wine services pop up that have started to try and understand their consumers and then ship them a shipment of wine which is personalized to their palates. So be thinking about how could you personalize or customize the wine buying experience more in the future. Of course, we're seeing a shift from offline sales to online sales. People moving to buy online in droves, particularly in the grocery sector. It's obviously a little more regulated here, especially here in Oregon, but that's something that we're seeing as a shift, and consumers are going to continue to want to be able to buy online, and you need to make that buying experience as frictionless as possible. As few clicks as possible to wine on the way is how you win in the marketplace. You're seeing us move, particularly amongst millennials and younger generations than that, away from ownership to more focus on services and experiences. So being able to spend their money, prioritizing their money to create memories and to have subscription services in their lives. So that helps you when you're trying to sell wine club subscriptions. To think about how can you create an experience that you wrap around that. So it's not just, hey, some wine comes in and you can go in and taste once in a while. What other experiences, perhaps digital experiences, could you wrap around that to make it truly appealing to millennials? We're seeing an appetite for innovation, particularly after COVID, people embracing new ways of doing things. You have an industry that's typically operated on tradition. And then convenience has always been a factor in the buying process, but now shoppers report it is the number one thing that they want. Yes, of course, they want price and quality, but number one, they want a convenient buying experience. It needs to be simple. They have busy lives, they have complex lives. You need to make the buying experience, the ability to say yes, the ability to choose, as simple as possible. All right. You also have a slight issue, given that this is the way that Gen Z and Gen Alpha behind them are likely to perceive cocktails. Cocktails are fun. Cocktails have something you do with friends. They're an exciting thing to consume. Beer is kind of seen the same way. People want to use, it's a very social thing. It's very accessible for most places. There's a category of what kind of beer do you want. You can easily select something you're likely to enjoy. You contrast that with the way that the wine industry runs. This is the way that choice is presented in a nice restaurant. And it's completely overwhelming and intimidating to most people. And in some cases, that is the point. It's designed to be intimidating, to make the sommelier come over and help you, guide you, so you can choose basically on price. So this is not the way that consumers want to be served. And the perception of the wine industry is kind of this guy. And it's not seen, it's seen as a whitey thing, and it is seen as an exclusive, snobby industry that is deliberately opaque and mysterious, and not in a good way. And so you're going to need to do some work to change the image that you have. And I know you all know this. Many of them, people in the industry I've talked to on a regular basis say, oh yeah, we all know. And so you need to have a more inclusive attitude so that wine drinkers feel like you know them, like you recognize that they are wine drinkers, and to be inclusive, to invite people in so that you recognize that wine drinkers look like this. Wine drinkers look like him. Wine drinkers look like her. And to start to rehabilitate your image and move away from snooty white guy and more to the way that the population, the US population, actually looks, and to fit in with their lives rather than, that guy. So you all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I wanted to reinforce it. You clearly have an accessibility challenge. What that means is you need to simplify, demystify, and desnobify the wine buying process. And I wanted to bring a few things, some technology things that might help you in that regard. So to step back, I talked about personalization earlier. Wine is a very personal product. It's a very personal thing because we all have different genetics. That's what the background on this is trying to show, is the DNA. We all have different DNA. 7.6 billion different people with different DNA. And yet, we all look to people like these people to tell us what's good wine and what isn't. They're telling us what's good for their palate. The question is, what is good for my palate? What is good for your palate? What is good for your customer's palate? There should be no judgment in wine. If you like it, it's great. It's as simple as that. So rather than looking to these people to help guide us, and it's a good guideline. If Parker says it's good, sure, I'll check it out. But it's not the be all and end all. And there are other ways of doing this. The question I want to pose to you is, what if every wine buying decision could be supported by a sommelier, by a som? How could you make it easier for people to choose? And one of the ways you could do that is with technology. There are a number of services. Wine for Me, you can see the URL up in the corner over there. Just point with that hand so my hand doesn't get cut off like that. There we go. Yeah, anyway. So Wine for Me, this is me it's a website component that you could integrate into your websites that would help your consumers figure out which of your wines is best for them. Now, this is the way I filled it in. How much body, how much oak do I like in my reds? What kind of finish do I like? How much spice? And it has a bit of AI behind it. It accurately told me, yep, you like GSM, Steve. And I really do. And I love my Bordeaux blends. So it's pretty accurate. Now, I did it again for my whites. I learned, maybe I should check out Verdeos. I certainly love Chenin Blanc. So this requires the consumer to have a level of understanding so they can move these sliders, so they can identify what does body mean, what does finish mean. If you don't understand those things, then this is not useful to you. But for many consumers, this is going to help you to sell your wine more effectively. So there's one idea. Whether you use this particular service or recreate something like it, doesn't matter. But be thinking about how you might be able to do that. Now, as I said, this requires consumers to have the sophistication to know what body and finish and acidity is all about. What if they don't? What if they don't have that level of sophistication? How do you still serve them? Well, this is an example of a company I want to tell you about called Tastery. They serve the wine industry. I think they're also looking at the perfume sector, beer, liquor, others, things that are aromatic, and helping to marry products with consumers using AI. This is the founder of the company you see in the lab coat there. And she's been working with her partners to teach a computer to taste. So what they do is they take wine, they analyze it, and then they get customer data, and they use an AI to marry those two together. And what they do is they have the simple test where a consumer answers 20 questions, specially designed questions, to figure out what that consumer's palate is. They think they can get 90% accuracy on identifying that particular consumer's palate. They analyze bottles of wine. You can see here they're showing what that analysis can look like. There's a very detailed analysis. Those results all go back to the winemaker. And then at point of sale, they're able to create this consumer experience where consumers can answer all these questions in the store if they haven't done it on their phone, and it will tell them which wines in the store are ones that will suit their palate. So it's a very interesting example of how to use technology to, again, provide a sommelier-like experience at scale to demystify wine and to make it more accessible to many, many people. Now, this type of service, and by the way, I'm not recommending this service. I'm using it purely as an example of what's possible and what will be possible going forward. So the benefits of this type of approach is for consumers, they're getting personalized recommendations that help them to discover new wines and, importantly, to be more confident about their purchases. Many people go into a wine store, they don't know much about wine, they buy on price, or they buy because it has a label that they like the look of, or it's called something really cheesy like Ménage à Trois. And so that's how people sell wine these days. So this is a way of getting around that and helping consumers to find wine they'll actually like at a price point that they like, and to be able to make that connection so that they go home and maybe start to build a brand affinity for your wine, so they're willing to try other wines that you make. For retailers, it helps them with assortment optimization. Now, there are tools built in this Tastery platform that help them figure out which parts of the country do people with these palates have? Where should I distribute wines to get the biggest bang for the buck? What are the wines I should have on my shelf in this store versus this store versus this store? And it's also helped them with long tail sales. Because it's a discovery platform, it helps people discover wines that they otherwise would never try. For distributors, I should stick my hand out of the way, it helps them with assortment and distribution optimization, picking out where to send things. And for winemakers, it's really powerful. It helps them with product mix optimization. What are the wines I should be trying to make? It has this notion of computational blending. Hold that thought, we're going to come to that at the end. It will even generate sell sheets for you to help you sell that wine into distribution to retailers, and even you could use that information to sell to consumers. So it's a powerful tool, and this is the type of information you get. This is the sell sheet it will generate that helps you to grade these things and make information accessible to consumers. And this has been incredibly successful in early trials that they've done. This is a young, new company. It looks a bit familiar, if I again move my head. Level Beer in Multnomah, Multnomah Village, they have done something similar to this. They are selling their beers by making it more accessible for consumers to figure out, will I like this beer? Does it have the characteristics that I like? And so on every Level Beer, it shows you what these characteristics are. Is it hoppy? Is it malty? Is it bitter? Is it sour? No sour, please. So and also a beer drinker, this is a great way that helps me choose and helps many other consumers choose their products. This is something, there's a winery on the East Coast called Lakewood Vineyards. They've embraced a similar system on their labels to help consumers know, is this Riesling medium sweet or is it bone dry? Is this one that will suit my taste? Something that you also see in many European wines. They have a numbering system to help people understand the sweetness of a wine. So my counsel to you is find ways to help consumers choose with confidence. Give them more information that they need to help them make a decision, whether it's on your website, whether it's in retail, whether it's in a restaurant. Doesn't matter. Help them choose with confidence. Another thing that consumers, as I mentioned earlier, they're more interested to know how you made wine and why you made it that way. What your thinking was behind it. They're interested in your why and your how. What that means is they want more transparency, they want more information about the products that they buy in general, and particularly when they're thinking about buying wine, because it's something they're consuming. Consumers, especially after COVID, want to know more and more about the products that they physically consume. So there's been a move in all industries, and I think you're going to see it happening a lot in the wine industry now, to bring transparency. And transparency, as you see on the slide, helps brands manage their supply chains, comply with regulations, and tell their story. So think about this as a way of getting more information, tracking information from suppliers. So from your grape growers, from any chemical suppliers that you might use for fertilizers and so on. Being able to gather all that information, package it, and then use that to tell a story to consumers about how you lovingly were a steward of the land, that you took care to make this wine in a particular way, to share the vision of the winemaker. You can add videos and that sort of thing as part of this sort of storytelling platform. And if you are, have biodynamic practices, if you are a B Corp, be able to tell that story and show it with evidence to the consumer. Now, this is in the early days of evolution, but you're going to see platforms like this emerge. I mentioned earlier that I am in the Provenance Chain Network. That is one of the transparency players out there, so full disclosure. I'm telling you this not because I'm in that company. I'm telling you because I think this is a big deal for the wine industry, and you're going to see this take hold starting in Oregon and in Napa Valley. I think you're going to see some big players jump on this as well. So get ready to add this to your portfolio of things you have to think about. Let's talk about viticulture and winemaking, and then we'll wrap this up. So robots, as I showed you, have been changing the way that many businesses operate, and that is also happening in the agriculture world. This is a robot from a company called Eco Robotics, and because it can see, has great machine vision, it can roam through a field using solar power and zap weeds as it goes. Let me show you a video so you can see how cool this is. So pretty cool robot, and it has machine vision sophisticated enough to see the difference between the plants it's trying to grow and the weeds it's trying to get rid of. And as you saw in that video, it uses 90% less herbicides. Instead of just indiscriminately spraying on fields, it is able to spot spray. And you're going to see similar things being developed for vineyards that are able to do things to help you with taking care of the grapes. So you're also starting to see the emergence of fruit picking robots. There are robots that can pick raspberries, that can pick strawberries, blueberries, that can harvest apples and pears. And they have very sophisticated artificial intelligence and sensors so that they can pick these very delicate fruits. People are embracing these because of the lack of migrant labor in this country right now, and also because they're able to work 24 hours. And it's really good to get these soft fruits when it's cold out, so during the night, because they're going to protect them, they bruise less. Some of these are even sophisticated enough to be able to harvest things like peppers, where the robot is able to look at the shape of the pepper, and it knows, it can assess whether that pepper is ripe based on the shape of the underside of the pepper, and then it can snip it off of the stem. So I think you can start to imagine, as this type of technology evolves, what that would mean for grape picking when harvest time comes. You may be working alongside robots in your fields. There are already some robots working in fields. This is an example from a company called Burro, and they have developed a robot called a cobot. So a cobot is a collaborative robot. So it's a category of robotics. These are robots that are not designed to replace humans, but to work alongside and in partnership with humans. Let me show you what these robots can do. So fully autonomous, they avoid objects. And they're just there to help support the workers, so they're not carrying heavy buckets of grapes around. Pretty cool. So, as well as robots in the field, you're seeing drones start to come into agriculture, particularly in the vineyard section, so viticulture section, and you see them being used for doing surveys, for spraying of crops where that is required, and even for doing surveys in a semi-autonomous or fully autonomous way. So you can map out your field, you set the path, and then the drone just run back and forth and gather the data that they need, so that you get a bird's eye view. So in many cases, this is replacing satellite data that was used previously. And so you can do this NDVI or EVI, so the vegetative index scanning, and look for any health issues with plants in your vineyards. So being able to just gather that information, compare day to day, week to week, and be able to manage things better using that data. So drones being deployed to do that. I promised that I would talk about computational blending at the end, so here's that finish. So for you winemakers out there, this is a tool. Think about those sneakers I showed you, the architectural designs I showed you earlier, that was very organic, super cool looking, very optimized designs. Now, those sneakers I showed you were way bouncier, way lighter weight, way stronger than the design that was done originally by the human. Here's your opportunity to embrace a similar technology and use it to help you make better wines. So this is a technology, again, from Tastery. It's one of the aspects of their platform. Again, I'm not advocating for them as a company. I just wanted to make you know this type of capability is out there. And I'm sure other companies will be jumping on this type of thing too. It enables you to analyze your wines. It will give you a predicted wine score of your blend. And then it will give you insights and say, hey, if you blended it this way, then I think your wine score might go up a little bit, based on the data that it has and the huge database of other wines that it draws from. Or if you blended it this way, it would appeal to this demographic of people more. So it gives you blend recommendations. If you're into vintage consistency, if that's important in your business, not so much in Oregon wineries, but in some of the big wineries down in California, that's absolutely something that they care about. You might look at this and think, well, this is taken away from my humanity, my creativity as a winemaker to express myself in the way that I make. I don't want a machine to tell me how to do this. Well, here's my answer to that. Many winemakers are using this as a way to test their visions, and they say it helps them to be more creative, to take more creative risks, because it confirms their creative vision. So you might try something that you think is kind of wacky and different, but really is going to pay off and be cool. You better test it with this AI and it'll tell you, yeah, that's brilliant. What amazing insight. You should do that. So it is a way to confirm your creative vision. It's not going to constrain you. It actually will help liberate you. And the people that use those shoemaking and architectural and engineering tools, 201, all reported. Not only did it make them more productive, it made them feel more creative and imaginative. And I hope that these types of technologies will help you feel that way too. As a consumer of your product, I can't wait to see the kind of products that it helps you, the kind of wines it helps you to imagine and blend. So to wrap this up and take it home, closing thoughts from the Future Boy. Consumer expectations and habits, there we go, are clearly evolving, and COVID accelerated many of those changes. It is not a temporary shift. These are accelerations in things that were going to happen anyway. You have to embrace them. You have no choice. What that means is you need to drive innovation into your business, into every corner of your business. I'm not going to say innovate or die, but certainly innovate or wither slowly away to irrelevance. And that applies to the wine industry as a whole. You know, you're competing against other sectors of the drink industry, but also as industries and as locales. So thinking about the Willamette Valley, for example, you know, how do you maintain competitiveness against other locations in the United States and in the world at large? So you need to innovate to remain competitive. There are, as I hope I showed you, some very powerful new technologies that you have at your fingertips now. Now, I'm not expecting you're going to go write an AI, but you'll be able to work with new suppliers to help you bring that innovation into your business. So embrace those technologies, get smarter about them. If it helps you, I was going to grab a copy of my book, but it's behind my green screen here. If it helps you, my book, The Innovation Ultimatum, is packed with information designed to help you to understand these things more. Adopt a digital-first mentality. The companies that will be most successful are ones that look at problems and don't think, well, how could we solve that? But how could we solve that using digital technology? How could we use that to scale our businesses more powerfully, to solve problems in new ways? Now, I have no illusion that you, as a single winery, can do any of this stuff on your own. You can do some of it, but I think really this is an opportunity for you to come together as an industry, perhaps as the Oregon wine industry. Maybe you bring in the Washington wine industry, do a Northwest collaborative to co-fund efforts to investigate these types of technologies, to maybe rebrand and remarket wine so you can reach more diverse audiences and make it feel more inclusive, and just really to drive innovation. it's harder to do alone than it is to do with friends. Now, I know they're also competition, but this is an era for co-opetition, to collaborate together, to move the whole industry, to elevate it, to move it forward, and make sure that Oregon is competitive with the rest of the world. I hope that was useful for you. I really enjoyed spending time thinking about this, and I wish you all the best because I love your product, I love what you do, and I know it was a tough year last year. I have to say I'm optimistic about your future, and I'm excited to see where you go next. Thanks for your time.